This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Gift magical mornings with Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Compact and stylish, Virtuo Pop is made to meet every morning coffee craving. From espresso to coffee, hot or iced, at the click of a button. And celebrate the season with Nespresso's limited edition coffee flavors. Sweet almond and hibiscus, cinnamon and candied tamarind, and festive double espresso. Magic in the making. Shop the holiday gift collection exclusively at Nespresso.com.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, July 17th, 2023. On the show today, news, listener questions, and more surveys from Universal and Disney. Then in our main segment, Jim wraps up the history of the Toy Story Mania attractions around the world. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says that every relationship has someone who stacks the dishwasher like a Scandinavian architect and someone with the spatial awareness of an inebriated porcupine. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len, and interesting that you bring up this issue because, yes, Nancy and I have had several conversations about this over our 26 years together. And how familiar are you with A Few Good Men, the play that Aaron Sorkin wrote?
I've never seen the entire movie, but I've seen the clips. Go ahead.
The character that Jack Nicholson plays, Colonel Nathan Jessup. I chose to channel a piece of what Colonel Jessup said in that play at one point with Nancy in regard to this moment. And here's the quote. "I have neither the time nor the inclination to explain myself to a woman who enjoys the clean dishes that I provide. I prefer that you just say thank you and then be on your way." Coincidentally, Len, immediately after this conversation, I had to move to the front yard for a couple of days.
Yeah, what's it like sleeping outside in New Hampshire in the summer? Yeah.
There we go.
I thought you were going to go with, you want the spoons? You can't handle the spoons.
Well, also another way to go.
Jim, let's do a shout out to subscribers over at disneydish.bandcamp.com. Thanks to new subscribers Jesse 21773, Rory CB, Tinkering Bells, and Troublemaker. And longtime subscribers CS Zuko, M. Kirachi, Dave Maruk, and RL Duval. Jim, these are the Disney cast members who designed the fantastic Redwood Creek Challenge Trail at Disney California Adventure. They say that the rock climbing wall, the zip line, and the slides are wonderful enrichment exercises that teach creative problem solving and have also reduced the number of guests eaten by bears to historic lows. True story. It's practically zero, Jim. Close enough.
Zero. There we go. You got to grade on a curve, kids. You got to grade on a curve. So.
Exactly. All right, Jim, let's do the news. Jim, the Haunted Mansion has announced a short refurbishment. We don't normally mention these kinds of things on the show, but this one's interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, the mansion closes August 7th and reopens to guests August 10th. Mm-hmm. And the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party begins the next day, August 11th. And I believe there's a media event around all of this. Also, Jim, Disney's Haunted Mansion movie will be in theaters. It opens this July 28th, so it'll have been in theaters for a little less than 2 weeks. Is this when we should expect to see the Hatbox Ghost, Jim, in Walt Disney World?
Kim Irvine, just in the past week or so, mentioned that there was, quote-unquote, new magic coming to the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. So the load-in of Hatbox is a relatively easy thing. I mean, you physically have to bring the figure into the attraction and do some quick testing and that sort of thing. But given that this is already working on the West Coast, it's not that big a deal. So, yes, I would bet you, especially with the media event tied to it, this is not a coincidence. On the other hand, I am genuinely fascinated by what Kim teased for the West Coast. And by the way, the new magic is supposedly showing up in Anaheim in 2024.
So that's probably more substantial than if it's taking that long to implement.
Just in the past week, Len, we've seen the familiar conversation start again about Southern California locals, to the effect of the mansion is going to go down again to be changed out for Haunted Mansion Holiday. And it just frustrates a lot of folks who are Haunted Mansion buffs that on Halloween, they can't experience the mansion that they love. They get the Tim Burtonized version, which, by the way, has its own equally passionate fan base. So
yeah, there's a lot going on there. All right, we'll see what happens in Disneyland. Just a quick reminder to Imagineers, there are other attractions in the Disney parks besides the Haunted Mansion. I refer you to Carousel of Progress.
Speaking of what, did you see the video that popped up this week on Twitter of the squirrel on stage, a live squirrel on stage? in this attraction?
No, I completely missed this. How?
The squirrel is on stage, and the animatronic dog starts to move, and the squirrel like, hang on.
What's going on here? Okay.
You know, it's like,
sort of fresh hell is this?
there we go. So,
That's fantastic. No, send me the video. I'd love to take a look at it.
okay, we'll do.
Also, Jim, the portrait of Dorian Gray that Bob Iger keeps in his attic continues to work. And I mention this because Iger just got his contract extended by Disney, and it runs through 2026. Well, he'll remain CEO. Also, Jim, Bob Iger was on CNBC this morning and actually talked about one of the stories that I've been involved with over the past week. And Jim, you and I mentioned before the show began that this is probably not the first time that Bob Iger had to be briefed on something I said before he went in front of the media. Anyway.
Well, I really enjoy that piece in the Wall Street Journal.
One day Bob and I are going to meet, and he's going to be like, you! But
That's right. Get ready for your lapels to be grabbed, Len. So
anyway, this particular story was about low wait times at Walt Disney World for the July 4th holiday. And so I worked with the Wall Street Journal last week to take a look at this exact question. And that article ran this past Monday, July 10th. And the thing, Jim, that I cannot believe is how many media outlets contacted me about that after the article. The data was featured in stories all week from CNN to Bill O'Reilly. And I did interviews with people as far away as South Africa. But anyway, Jim, let's go over the question and how it was answered. So the question was, were wait times really historically low on July 4th? And the short answer is yeah. The average wait time across the Magic Kingdom's major attractions on July 4th was around 27 minutes. It was also 27 minutes at Epcot, 25 minutes at the Animal Kingdom, and 18 minutes at Hollywood Studios. And then another way of looking at that is how busy July 4th was compared to the previous 365 days, right? And this is useful because when you're comparing across years, you have to take into account things like the fact that Disney has a park reservation system in place now, which it did not have in 2019, pre-pandemic. Anyway, if you look at how busy the parks were compared to the previous 365 days, at the Magic Kingdom, it was the 275th busiest day of the past year. Epcot was 295. Animal Kingdom was 343rd, which means it was like one of the least busy 3 weeks in the last year. And at Hollywood Studios, it was ranked 363rd, so the second slowest day of the past year. Okay, so we know it wasn't crowded in both absolute and relative terms. The next question is why? So I pulled some historical wait time data going back to 2015 for every Disney and Universal theme park in the United States. And I noticed some things. One was that the Magic Kingdom was slow last year too, as was Animal Kingdom and the studios. And the studios in the Animal Kingdom are always slow on July 4th, probably because they lack fireworks.
Okay.
If you look before the pandemic, like from 2015 to 2019, July 4th was actually fairly popular for Walt Disney World. July 4th was somewhere between the 10th and 50th busiest day of the year at the Magic Kingdom. Right. So one, open question is what's changed at Walt Disney World since 2019, right? Another thing to look at was this, like how did other theme parks around the country do? So was it just Florida or was it theme parks in general? And this is where it gets interesting because every Disney and Universal theme park in the US plus SeaWorld in Orlando had lower crowds in 2023 than in 2019, which tells us it's probably not isolated to Disney or to Central Florida. So the first thing I look at when there are questions about short-term attendance is what's the weather like? And this is probably the most likely explanation for what happened in Disney World and for a lot of places around the U.S. Central Florida had a heat advisory in effect on July 4th, where weather services were telling people to stay indoors because the heat index was going to reach 112 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah. And there was also the possibility of thunderstorms at night, which threatened to cancel the fireworks shows. So everything else being equal, the fact that the government's telling you to stay inside and it might rain probably suppressed crowds on July 4th. And the other supporting fact for that is that the next day, Wednesday, crowds were back to above average levels.
Okay.
Yeah. But there are also some long-term trends at play, and every time I talk to media outlets, I want to emphasize this too. We probably have the end of 2022's revenge travel surge, right? And Disney's more expensive and complicated than ever, right?
Also true.
Also, Tron probably doesn't have enough appeal for families to make a special trip. I usually say that, anyone in the theme park industry will tell you the way that you attract guests back to your park this year is by opening new rides. Disney did open one new ride. Mm-hmm. I don't know that Tron is moving the needle. What do you think, Jim?
I don't know if you've been paying attention. Tron Ares, the third Tron movie, is actually casting. Production begin later this summer.
Wow.
So, great. A brand new Tron movie to boost interest in your ride a year after, or a year plus after it opens. It's like, okay, guys, so you're really nailing the timing here.
Timing. I want to talk to you about timing in a second. So, going back to the attendance thing, the Orlando Sentinel reported this week that Orange County tourism tax revenue has fallen for 2 straight months. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, Florida tourism in general is doing really well, and Port Canaveral in particular is seeing very strong demand for cruises, including the Disney Cruise Line. Mm-hmm. So the fact that this happened around Central Florida, including non-Disney things, makes me think it isn't necessarily related to Disney. So my conclusion was that the most likely explanation was weather, and Bob Iger today seems to have agreed with that.
Okay.
As well. So you're welcome, Bob. But Jim, going back to your point about movies, there's all this talk lately about how Disney's not doing well at the box office, which is objectively true, right? Mm-hmm. But remember when pre-pandemic, Chapek was talking about how Disney was all in on movie franchises. The idea is that once you get people interested in something like The Avengers, you could run that for years. And it would be less risky than coming up with entirely new franchises, which people may or may not like. And that strategy works great, right? For a while, it worked great.
It does, but the part of that equation that seems to have gotten away from Disney, and this was not Disney's fault. When you think about the number of films that have come to the marketplace that were impacted by the pandemic, that had additional production costs, whether it was COVID protocols on set or working on animated features from home, the costs of the films that Disney has made over the past 2 and 3 years have skyrocketed.
Yeah.
At the same time when people, to be frank, have been reluctant to return to movie theaters. So that's been a brutal 1-2 punch. And so talking with folks at the studios, that is the new byword at Disney Studios right now. It's cost containment.
Yeah.
No, we're not making that movie for that price point. Go away and come back with a different budget. And then when you factor in, just today, you and I are sitting here waiting to find out whether or not SAG's going out on strike.
Oh, yeah.
It's a tough time.
Every one of my favorite TV series have been delayed. But Jim, I want to expand on the point that you made about the movies. So, Disney doesn't want to commit $350 million to Avengers movies anymore, right?
No.
The other thing that I thought that was interesting on this strategy was, the strategy of investing in franchises like Star Wars and Marvel. That's great as long as interest is going up in those franchises. But when interest is going down in them, if you think about how long it takes Disney to make a movie like that, 4 or 5 years. So let's say that interest had started to wane in these franchises last year, 2022. It takes 4 years for Disney to get out of the cycle where they could try something new, because that's how long it takes to take. They can't switch and say, oh, we're going to start, funding independent movies this year and bring them out later on this year, right? There's stuff in the pipeline that has already dictated their fate.
Absolutely.
Through 2026, right?
Yep. Yeah, and when you think about it along those terms, this is an ocean liner, and it takes forever to turn.
Yeah, and this is the opposite side of the, let's do everything based on IP strategy. It works until it doesn't. But when it doesn't, you can't turn on a dime because of the pipeline. Also, one more thing. When I was talking to all of these outlets, I was was talking with my internal team about looking at the data and stuff like that. And one of our people, Aaron Foster, mentioned, have you considered the impact that Taylor Swift concert tickets are having on discretionary spending for travel? And we all laughed for a minute, and then I'm like, well, could we quantify that? So if you look at Taylor Swift, she's got 131 dates,
right?
And there are around 50,000 people going to a show. So I calculated something like 6.6 million Taylor Swift tickets, going on sale around the world. And I think of that, like 2 million are in the United States. And 2 million is not a lot in terms of like Disney attendance, which is typically 50 to 60 million people a year, right? But Jim, if you imagine a Venn diagram, right? And so imagine you've got two hands, because we're going to draw two circles. And one hand, I want you to like think about this. If you're driving, don't take your hands off the wheel. Okay. But one hand represents the circle of Taylor Swift fans. Another hand represents the demographic of people who plan Disney World trips. And I know from our own statistics that the largest demographic of Disney trip planners are women between the ages of 25 and 44, living on the East Coast with a household income greater than $100,000 and a college education. Now, Jim, if you were to take that Venn diagram, Jim, and you were to overlay this, it's one circle, Jim. It's not two circles, right?
Okay. And I say this in the kindest possible way. Management at Disneyland Paris, where Taylor just announced the tour dates for 2024. There's a world of hurt headed your way.
So how much discretionary travel is being impacted by Taylor Swift? Yeah, and honestly, God, Jim, and I'm being dead serious. I begged the Wall Street Journal to put a picture of Taylor Swift on there with my quote saying, "Hi, she's the problem. It's Taylor." And they didn't do it because they have journalism standards and I do not, Jim.
Oh, Jacob, come on! You could have gone for it. Okay.
I know. I'm holding out hope that one of the smaller outlets will still run with it. So anyway, I can still have interviews lined up. It's amazing. Anyway, all right, we've got time for surveys, Jim. So Derek Ibarra sent in a universal survey asking about your interest in upgraded water park cabanas for Volcano Bay. And Jim, I want to get your input on this. The upgraded cabana would cost just under $1,300 per day and include amenities like 2 Ride Now reservations, free parking, premium food, dedicated concierge staff, souvenir towels, and such. But Jim, here's the thing that interested me. A normal cabana at Disney or Universal is somewhere between $300 and $600 a day, depending on the size of the cabana and the date on which you book it. What's the market for $1,300 cabanas? Like who's doing this?
Once upon a time, there were the diehard Disney fans that would go to the park every 3.75 years, and that's how the attractions were scheduled for the park. But now, that we have seen over the past couple of years, Disney's interest in the quote-unquote whales. The money is no object, folks. And the notion is to cater to these folks. You have to have options on the menu that are like, well, this is what we offer, the whales.
This is sort of like the, what was the Christmas catalog where like every year like you could buy something like a diamond-encrusted jet? Is it like the Neiman Marcus Christmas catalog?
There we go. That's the name. All
right. So this is the $1,250 cabana at Universal is the Neiman Marcus Christmas gift. Like no one's really going to buy it, but if you wanted to, it's there.
More to the point, when that person shows up, you have this is what we do, and this is the one we reserve, and yada yada yada. So. But for those folks, are the souvenir towel and the souvenir tote bag really going to seal the deal? It's oh, honey, look, we get a free tote bag, just like public radio. Woohoo! It's like...
Yeah, actually, NPR missed have they ever done a promo called Nina Toten Bag?
Well, there you go. What? You have Nina...
Have they not? Did I just invent something?
I think you may have. For the top donor for the year, Nina carries your keys and your phone around for 48 hours. All right? Did I
ever tell you about the time... I don't know, we're just digressing here, but ever tell you about the time I asked somebody from NPR Fundraising how much it would cost for a one-on-one conversation with Kai Ryssdal? And they were like, you don't have that kind of money?
Oh, okay, but it was like I remember Laurel saying, Laurel literally, it's not Kai Ryssdal, it's literally dreamy Kai Ryssdal.
Dreamy Kai Ryssdal, yeah.
So, all right, well.
All right. Anyway, if anyone from Marketplace wants to get in touch, you got to get in touch with me. All right, Jim, speaking of universal surveys, a number of listeners sent in the most unusual Universal survey that I've seen in a long time. Have you seen this one, Jim? It's about your preferred office settings. All right, so questions were like this. How long have you worked for your company? And this is a Universal Orlando theme park survey. How long have you worked for your company? During a typical week, how many days do you work in an office? How do you feel about fun zones in an office? Fun zones are office spaces that typically include lounge chairs, coffee tables, and games or activities for team members. Also, there was a whole section on rate your current break area in the lounge. All right, Jim, my first question is why? What is going on here? Is this one of the interns from Universal just saying, like, we're going to get talked about on the next Disney Dish and we're going to send out this survey now? Like, what's going on here?
Just want to point out something that just in the past week, Universal Creative has gotten a brand new CEO, Molly Murphy. Came through the door in Ginsler. Just want to lay out a little Imagineering history here that for a time, Disney offered the Imagineers to do outside projects. And for example, the Gene Autry Museum of Western Art at the edge of the park in LA, they designed that. So Disney had its creative services available for outside parties, and it turned into kind of a money pit. And I am hoping that this isn't Universal. Trust me, folks, this didn't work for Disney. The notion of, let's make ourselves available for corporations who are, by the way, trying to lure employees back after they've been home during the pandemic. And
okay. All right.
I don't care how big a fun zone you make. The fact that, for example, my commute is literally pull on the sweatpants and walk to the kitchen table. You're never getting me in an office.
You're wearing pants for this?
I got Nancy has standards. What can I tell you?
I didn't know we were all formal here. Let me go get my monocle, Jim. Okay. Okay. All right. No, but that's okay. So it's to get people to come back to the office. That makes sense. Okay. Thank you for that. I hadn't put that together.
Okay. Well, here to help.
Also, Jill from Cincinnati sent in the most complete version of that new Disney survey that we talked about last week that asks about changes to Genie Plus. And Jill pointed out, Jim, something I missed on the original survey last week, that Disney asked about offering more Tier A choices if you paid extra money for it. So remember last week we had talked about how Disney said, the mountains in the Magic Kingdom are going to be a Tier A selection where you get to pick one a day. But then Disney said in the next line, hey, if you want to give us more money, we'll give you another choice too.
Oh, Mr. Iger.
Dear sirs, please see your previous comments on this particular topic.
There we go.
All right, on to listener questions. We have a couple of them. On last week's show, we talked about the rumor that Disney World was seeing a record high number of guests using the DAS service to access the Lightning Lane lines at certain attractions. And I mentioned that we had started counting the number of guests per hour using those lines to try and figure out what's going on. And listener Holly wrote in with a reminder, and it was this. I also wanted to mention that people doing rider swap also use the Lightning Lane, so that would inflate numbers beyond Genie Plus sales and DAS usage. So thank you for that, Holly.
Excellent
I
point.
totally forgot about rider swap. Yeah, very good.
Okay.
Also, Aaron wrote in to say, I appreciate that you didn't jump to the assumption of system abuse, as many non-disabled people often do. Although any DAS-type system that Disney implements has the potential for abuse, it's far better to allow a small percentage of people who use it who don't need it than it would be to implement policies that inadvertently prevent people who do need it from being able to access it. That's true, right? If you have to, it's a great point. I mean, if you have to, you're going to make a mistake one way or the other because nothing's perfect. Which way do you have to lean, right?
No, absolutely.
Awesome. Also, Paul from Brighton, England, wrote in with this. Understandably, all the focus is steered towards the paid Genie Plus offerings, but I distinctly remember Len talking about the standard Genie service at launch needing improvements. Do you know if there's been any noticeable improvements to this since launch, or has Disney left it to languish? And I think, Paul, I think it's safe to say that regular Genie is the redheaded stepchild of Disney IT. I haven't seen improvement one. I haven't heard anybody talk about it. Nothing. Yeah, nothing at all. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we return, Jim continues the tale of how Disney has adapted the Toy Story Mania ride to fit into 3 different theme parks. We'll be right back.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by 20th Century Studios' new film, Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, starring Golden Globe winner Jeremy Allen White and Academy Award nominee Jeremy Strong. Scott Cooper, the director of the Academy Award-winning movie Crazy Heart, brings you the story of the most pivotal chapter in the life of an icon. Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. Only in theaters October 24th. Get your tickets now.
Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
All right, Jim, we had last week, I think we talked mostly about the California version of Toy Story Midway Mania, right?
We did. Again, Imagineers Kevin Rafferty and Bob Coltrane, in order to create room for Toy Story Midway Mania that was being built at California Adventure, it involved removing certain structural supports from the California Streaming Coaster, not to mention laying track around an electric substation that powered basically that entire side of the park. So no challenge, nothing going on there.
Absolutely fine.
This week, though, we're going to direct our attention to the East Coast, to where the Walt Disney World version of Toy Story Midway Mania was built, and that was Disney's Hollywood Studios. And okay, Len, we're just going to start with the obvious. The early 2000s were not a great time for Walt Disney World's third gate, which, by the way, up to January of 2008 was still being called Disney MGM Studios.
It's always going to be MGM Studios in my heart.
And for a number of us who have 5 working brain cells, you're not wrong. Just sort of default to the name that you learned when you were young and smart.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's start with the obvious. 100 Years of Magic, the 17-month-long celebration that was originally supposed to get underway October 1st of 2001, but that plan, for obvious reasons, got tripped up by 9/11. And forgive the turn of phrase here, but Disney MGM was supposed to be ground zero for Walt Disney World's 100 Years of Magic celebration.
Oh, was that because Epcot was the center of the Millennium Celebration?
That's it exactly. So
everyone got a turn. Okay.
Yeah, in much the way that the Mickey arm over Spaceship Earth was the icon for that celebration. We got the 122-foot tall Sorcerer Mickey hat at the end of Hollywood Boulevard, which blocked the view of Chinese theater, and we're not going to get into that. Though, watching how Disney's marketing team just could not settle on an icon for Disney MGM. I mean, think about it. Park first opens in 89. It's the Eiffel Tower. Then at some point, it shifts to the Chinese theater.
Yeah, which no one recognized as an icon. Yeah.
So, okay, July of 1994, Twilight Zone Tower of Terror opens. Better part of a decade, that's the park's icon. Sure. Then, as we mentioned, we have our Sorcerer Mickey hat that comes online September of 2001. That stays the park's icon for the better part of a decade, and then it shifts back to Tower. Now, Tower is pretty much the default icon at this point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so, yeah. It's what we use, yeah.
Okay. But here's the thing. In short order in the early 2000s, a lot of things that made Disney MGM a working studio fade from view. November 2003, much of Residential Street gets torn down to make room for the 500-seat arena for Lights, Motor, Action Extreme Stunt Show. Then, just 3 months later, January 2004, it's announced that Walt Disney Feature Animation Florida would be closing, putting 250 artists and animators out of work. And then, when you consider that in the same window of time, Disney's 20-year deal to license the MGM name and logo for, using that fabled movie studio's cachet, so to speak, to add an air of legitimacy to Disney World's third gate. Remember, back in '87, this was supposed to be a working movie and television production facility and a theme park. But right now, Disney knows that deal is going to expire in late 2007, early 2008.
Jim, what I'm hearing here is this. Once Disney crossed Estelle Getty by getting rid of the Golden Girls home on the Studio Backlight Tour, everything went to hell. Is that the synopsis of what you just said?
I actually like that scenario. So, yes,
Okay,
let's get that conspiracy theory going.
All right. Go ahead. Continue with your story then. All right. Just a little aside here. We're going to put a note in the margins. Go ahead.
There we go. All right. Anyway, with so many of the attractions that made Disneyland truly unique now gone, and with the name that the public so long associated with the Disney World 13 park about to be stripped away.
Right.
Imagine you're like, what now gives this park an identity? What gives guests a compelling reason to visit the studios? And this really became a problem, Len, in May of 2005 when the stateside version of Lights Motor Action opened and did not move the needle. It just wasn't enough to get people in that park. Thankfully, January 2006, word comes down from Burbank that the Disney Company is going to buy Pixar Animation Studios for $7.4 billion. And along with this purchase comes a brand new set of marching orders for the Imagineers, which is basically find as many ways as possible to cram Pixar IP into the parks. And folks at the still named Disney MGM take this directive and run with it. Their thinking is, well, look, center of the park, Mickey Avenue, which at this point only has one attraction on it, with the then fading Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Play It. Yeah. So if they take this part of the park and turn it into a section that celebrates Pixar, well, that would then give the studios a way to differentiate itself from the Magic Kingdom or Epcot or Animal Kingdom. Come here if you want Pixar.
That would be great if it was contained to just one park.
Well, no, there you go. There you go. Because I have a little problem with this plan because, Tough to Be a Bug, opened at Animal Kingdom, April of 1998. Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin opens Magic Kingdom November of that very same year. And then Turtle Talk with Crush has already opened over in Epcot's Living Seas Pavilion, November 2004. So as you mentioned, the Pixar has already spread around Florida. But MGM's response is, yeah. Individual attractions, though. If you want to talk about Pixar-themed land, a place where you can visit the Pixar characters, this place will be at the studios. And of course, it didn't hurt that Disney MGM managers already knew that Toy Story Midway Mania was already in development for Disney California Adventure, and they knew if they shoehorned a clone of that attraction to the Soundside 1 and 2 on Mickey Avenue, all they needed to do was shut down Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Play It, which, as we mentioned on last week's show, they did at great speed. That closed August 19th, 2006, 6 weeks before the start of the new fiscal year, and a full 4 months before the company revealed that either version of Toy Story Mania was in the works. That plan gets announced December of 2006. July of 2007, Mickey Avenue disappears behind a construction wall, so it begins its conversion into Pixar Place. And speaking of conversions, August 9th of the same year, the company reveals as of January 7th, 2008, Disney MGM Studios theme park will be rebranded as Disney's Hollywood Studios. Again, just a quick side note here. Not an inexpensive thing to do, Len.
Oh, sure.
Recently found out that between changing all of the highway signs on property and off, all of the letterhead, all the business cards, all of the costumes with the old Disney MGM logo,
the signage,
the company reportedly spent more than $10 million on this name change. So, but at the same time, what frustrates the folks at now Disney's Hollywood Studios is the other parks that are now horning in on their Pixar action. Case in point, Epcot's Living Seas Pavilion, as of January 4th, 2007, becomes the Seas with Nemo and Friends.
And this is the thing that drove me crazy, because I remember walking Hollywood Studios or MGM Studios with you prior to this change, and you saying, okay, this is where Pixar is going to live. And I'm like, yeah, that's great, but who is the person high up enough in the Disney company to enforce that across all the parks in Walt Disney World, because I didn't think that they had the institutional will to stick with that plan when attendance at the other parks dropped.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And more to the point, given how theme park attractions are financed with the notion of they have to depreciate over decades for one park to become, quote unquote, the Pixar park at Walt Disney World. I mean, we're years away from if that is ever going to happen. But all right, to get back to the Florida version of Toy Story Midway Mania, especially with things like the Seas with Nemo and Friends, how do we make this different? How do we make this special? And do you remember this promotional stunt, Len, where on the very same day that the Florida version of Midway Mania opens, that's May 31st, 2008, Disney arranged to have a 12-inch tall Buzz Lightyear action figure sent into space aboard the space shuttle?
I didn't remember that, man. Yeah, okay.
This toy goes up to the International Space Station, and they feature the footage. They show the toy in the International Space Station as part of the press event. It then stays up there for 15 months. And when it comes back down, well, first of all, again, Disney doesn't miss a trick. So 2008 is, of course, the year of a million dreams at Walt Disney World. And so they explain that Buzz has always really wanted to go into space. So we made this happen for that 12-inch action figure. And then 15 months later, October of 2009, he comes back down to Earth, and they arrange for a ticker tape parade for Buzz at the Magic Kingdom. But that's not good enough for Disney. So they have this 12-inch action figure, carried through the park by the real Buzz Aldrin. So,
that's fantastic.
Not to miss a trick, they have Buzz Aldrin take the action figure on Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger spin, and then they take him over to Epcot and put him on Mission Space, and all of these photos go around the world. But anyway, back to the Florida version of Toy Story Midway Mania, hit straight out of the box, as is Woody's picture shooting gallery, which is just across the way. I think honestly it was the best photo op thing I've ever seen on Disney property.
This is the one across the walkway in the brick building where Edna Mode is now. It's,
yes. In fact, I would argue it's a really Edna Mode. Don't get me wrong. I know there are people who love Edna Mode, but it's a really poor substitute. Well, what was there? I mean, the queue was filled. I mean, as you're making your way to the actual photo spot, which, by the way, you got your picture taken with Woody and Buzz.
Wow, a twofer. All right.
But you passed all these photo drops that were Toy Story specific. I mean, you could get your picture taken, while you're waiting in line, whip out your phone and, okay, I'm now in Stinky Pete's box. I'm now in the claw machine from Pizza Planet with the three-eyed aliens. I'm now even inside of the upside down milk crate in Sid's bedroom. And all of that leading up to the final really for real photo op where you are standing on a supersized version of Andy's bed with Woody and Buzz. I mean, it was this great photo thing. Anyway, Pixar Place is such a hit that 2 months after this new land opens at Disney's Hollywood Studios, plans are revealed to expand this part of the park. Now, mind you, they were revealed by accident. To this day, they don't know who did it. But this is July of 2008. And folks who are working the third shift at Walt Disney World, when they go on the CAS portal to check in or update their, medical insurance, that sort of thing, there's a video there. And if you access the video, it shows you the plans for the Monsters, Inc. coaster.
The thing that I remember about this, Jim, is this is when cell phones started to get decent cameras. Because I think the way that I learned about this was a cast member filming this thing on the cast member portal and sending it to me through their phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was only up there for, I'd say, 8 hours, maybe as long as 12, because it had been uploaded by accident on the West Coast, and it took till an employee got out in Burbank to shut it down. But yeah, people knew that the empty soundstage at the end of the street was where this Dora coaster was going to go. But it turns out it had been uploaded by accident. This project wasn't supposed to reveal to October of that same year, but by October of 2008, that's when the financial correction is happening and the U.S. housing market collapsed. And How many projects did we lose during that period? I mean, things like Hyperion Wharf.
I was going to say wasn't there an entire redo of Downtown Disney that was supposed to happen that just faded into oblivion? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, that never happens.
Nope.
That said, Toy Story Midway Mania is still so ridiculously popular that it's one of these things where it's like, we have to expand this. So in March of 2015, they announced that they're going to take that empty soundstage at the end of the street and they're going to put a third track in.
The attraction was that popular that they had to expand capacity.
I have looked over all of Disneyland history, and the only other time that I've seen the company do this, the first Autopia opens at Disneyland in 1955. So popular with kids, they create, suddenly there's a Tomorrowland Autopia and there's a Fantasyland Autopia. And then, because the lines of kids are so long, and more to the point, there are kids who are just not tall enough to do the Autopia, they create the midget Autopia. And so for a short time, and I want to say this is, the three of them operate in the park till 65 or thereabouts, and then the midget Autopia closes to make room for It's a Small World. But that's the only time previously that Disney has done this sort of thing.
Interesting.
Anyway, third track of Toy Story Midway Mania opens May of 2016. But even now, Disney knows that in Florida, the Toy Story characters are so popular, they have to expand even further. And so as part of the, if we're going to spend the money, to do Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, let's take advantage of, the amount of construction we're going to do. And they decide what they're going to do is keep the three versions of Toy Story Midway Mania in place, but they're just going to pivot where the entrance is. They're going to the backside of the building, which will now face into a true Toy Story Land. In fact, the new entrance complex will be basically across the way from Slinky Dog Dash.
And that's where it is today, yeah.
Yeah. That opens in July of 2018. In fact, what's kind of a sad little bend on the story is that Pixar Place, at least for the first week or so that Toy Story Land is open, is used as the overflow queue. They send the guests down there and they get to look at Woody's picture shooting gallery. But there is a happy ending to the storyline. Just back on May 13th of this year, Pixar Place is back. It's been reinvented largely as an incredible themed area, though if you go down there, you do see Sully. Mind you, he doesn't have a coaster, but you get Monsters, Inc. characters. But that's kind of how our Toy Story Midway Mania story has ended. Though I do want to point out that when they initially announced this project way back in 2006, 2007, there was all this talk about, what's great about these video-based attractions is we can do seasonal overlays. We can do a Halloween version, a Christmas version. And they added, in fact, they pulled out the Bo Peep balloon pop and put in the Trixie and Rex dart game, but that's it.
Yeah, and it really has not gotten the updates that we would have expected. A video-based thing to. Yeah, it's a great idea. Seasonal overlays. The same thing with Star Tours, any simulator-based ride, Soarin', things like that. We tend to get an update once a decade or so, if that. Supposedly,
Star Tours next year is getting new ride films that key off of The Mandalorian and that sort of thing. But
those are just segments, though. That's not it's not a
I get that. So no disrespect to Kim Irvine. Yes, and I love you're putting new magic in the mansion, but across the way, Toy Story Midway Mania, come on, a little love.
Yeah, the thing is, too, new games, though, aren't going to drive attendance. Let me ask you this question, though, Jim. If you think about Hollywood studios, right, You've got that Toy Story Land area, and they just opened up the Roundup Rodeo Barbecue restaurant, there as well. There's still some space for expansion north and east of Toy Story Land that would involve, I think there's getting rid of some cast member buildings behind the scenes, but also, I got to say, Animation Courtyard is not being heavily used right now. Do you think that there's the possibility of Toy Story Land being expanded over time?
It's a two-step plan. If you think about the number of guests that have to, when they walk all the way down to Tower of Terror or
Yeah.
Rock and Roller Coaster or the Cars Racing Academy, and then have to, it's a cul-de-sac. You got to walk all the way back. On the other hand, if you were to tear down the old Magic of Disney Animation building and proceed through those backstage areas and create a pass-through space, I mean, yes, you could put attractions back there. More to the point, you could allow guests to continue back into the heart of the park without retracing their steps. And I have heard numerous times this is where they wanted to move that Monsters, Inc. stuff.
It would totally make sense there, yeah.
Yeah, and it's Walt Disney World, and every park gets a turn. And when you think about the damn near $1 billion that was spent adding Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Toy Story Land to that park, we are a while yet before we will see attention pivot back to that park. So
Yeah, I think it's got to be Animal Kingdom, Epcot, Magic Kingdom Studios again, but we'll see.
yeah, well, you're not wrong. So
All right, but at least there's an idea.
there's an idea.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show and Jim Hill Media by subscribing over at disneydish.bandcamp.com, where you'll find exclusive shows never before heard on iTunes. And our email for tech support at Bandcamp is support@bandcamp.com. On next week's show, we're celebrating the release of the Barbie movie as Jim tells us about the magical world of Barbie show that was once presented at Epcot. I'm sure Jim's going to give that show 110%.
So much pink, Len. So much.
You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. We're produced fabulously by Aaron Adams, who'll be debuting a new song titled There's a Bison in My Boot when he opens for vocalist Kaylin Beasley at the 2023 Yellowstone Songwriter Festival on Thursday, September 7th at 7 p.m. at the Cody Auditorium on Beck Avenue in beautiful downtown Cody, Wyoming. While Aaron's doing that, please go onto iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.